Hey everyone, this is Roman Prokopchuk, and this is the Digital Savage Experience podcast. Today I have with me Jake Thomas. Jake has a passion for personal service that stems from being a United States Marine. He has proudly leveraged that among a plethora of other experiences and hardships into a career of helping people satisfy some of the most basic human needs: health, happiness, and wealth. Thank you for joining me today.
Thanks so much for having me, Roman. It's great to be here.
My pleasure. So tell me a little bit about your journey. How did you get to where you are today?
Good question. Big question. A lot of failing, that's for sure. But kind of ran away from home, found myself in the Marine Corps, loved it, was proud to be a Marine, never had that kind of character identity and, understanding of myself, and through discipline and leadership and all the principles that came along with that, and the adventure, of course. But when I got out of the Marine Corps, life was not as I remembered it, or not as I left it. And it was hard for me to readjust to not being a Marine again. And I didn't feel like I had this identity. I didn't feel like I was a person of character anymore, didn't have a purpose again. And for almost 20 years after that, was just hard on myself by way of abusing anything I could, substance-wise, drink-wise, company-wise, environment, anything I could get to not feel reality and escape sobriety. And it took me, like I said, the better part of 20 years to go through that, banging my head against the wall over and over and over. But what it came down to was a void of wholesomeness within myself. And since I've found that, my world has completely changed, man. And that's what I help people do now with themselves.
Yeah, that's awesome. Kind of like side note, I was going to go to the Marine Corps, into OCS from college to Officer Candidate School.
Yeah.
But I ended up, apparently, like unbeknownst to me, having a ulcer caused by a bacteria called H. pylori. So like doing the pre-ship PFT to go to Quantico, I couldn't do the run because I would start, spitting up and throwing up blood. And I never knew what it was. So maybe it's kind of a blessing in disguise, or, I went a different route. But I think if I went and I ended up going, I probably would have, died. So, I mean, I appreciate your service. And, as a civilian, I've trained with the Marine Corps in that capacity, especially like doing, all the courses like the O course and stuff like that.
Oh, nice.
And yeah, I see a lot of people kind of like transitioning and having a tough time transition, obviously having that structure or, seeing action, and then obviously having mental concerns from that as well. And in terms of kind of moving into the fitness, was that kind of a natural transition? Is it something you were always, even before the Marine Corps, interested in, or how did that kind of come about?
Yeah, I played all the sports as a kid, anything with a ball. Soccer was my main one, track as well, and I ran track in college. But once I got into the military, I realized how much, my body was critical. Being able to depend on my body became critical for me to not only do my job well, but in case I needed to save someone else, or just knowing I could rely on it, right, became pretty serious to me. That never left. And that is something I'm grateful for, that has never left me. And throughout my years, even amidst some of the worst of times, I still always did that. I still always maintained good physical condition, even when I was way overweight, or even when I was technically very mentally and metabolically sick. I still tried to maintain physical condition. And that tie, or that love or attraction, whatever, is really what brought me out of that same hell that I put myself into, because it all started with taking care of myself through nutrition. And that's what I impress upon people now, in the sense that many of us think that it's the superficial, it's the exterior that we need. Like, oh, if I could just start running again, or if I could just start working out again. It's like, no, dude, the most profound impact any of us can have on our health, the single thing we can all do, is control what we put into our freaking mouths. It's about nutrition, man. Straight up. Sustenance. How we consume, what we consume, who we're around, what we see, what we do. That's the most important thing for not just your body, not just your mind, but absolutely for your soul and overall well-being. And it took me, like I said, the better part of 20 years to figure that out. But now that I have, I'm literally just trying to give it away to the world and help other people do that themselves.
Yeah, I mean it's an easy equation that people don't necessarily think about in terms of calories as a measurement of energy. So the amount of calories you put in and the amount of calories you use, that leftover, if it's over what you're using, obviously you're storing. So I mean, usually, I mean, I really started working out, I guess when I was 18, and consistently have been, for I'm 38 for now. I mean, I slowed down, but when I first kind of started, it was like because my metabolism could do whatever. You can put anything in your body, but that doesn't mean I was, healthy. Yes, I was, I put on muscle, so on and so forth. But for me also, it was like you said, it got you through things. The consistent kind of focus on fitness. I think it's my like place that I can go by myself and kind of do my thing, and it's kind of like a stress reliever. Not everybody obviously wants to be in the gym at times, regardless of what they're even handling in life. And I think, I guess people start working out for different reasons too. So obviously to get in shape, self-esteem, stuff like that. It kind of subconsciously, I think, started because as a child, I saw my mom like domestic abuse from my dad, and he's like 6'3", 250, 260 or so. So I think subconsciously I said, when I grow up, I want to be like somewhat like physically dominant in a sense, not to like impress others, but to kind of protect others. So situations where, if that ever arose, I can, do kind of something about it. So I think it was kind of like the hidden reason I started working out and really kind of like, I guess, lifting heavy. And I guess at this point it's kind of muscle memory. Like when I mean, I haven't been to the gym in like 2 months because of circumstances and stuff like that. It's not necessarily an excuse, but usually when I can jump into it and get a few solid weeks, I can see results a lot faster than, somebody that never, did cardio consistently or really lifted as well.
Totally. And the word you used earlier about easy is subjective. It's simple. The fact of the point you were making is about simplicity. Ease is dependent on you and I. It could be easy to me. It could be difficult for you. But something being simple or not is matter of fact. And the simplicity of X plus Y equals Z, meaning if you eat this way, if you work out this way, your body will change this way. That's a simple equation. Fact. It's also simple to know that you probably know people that work out twice a day or 10 times a week, but they don't eat well, they don't live well, and they don't look like people that work out that frequently, that intensely, right? Then you probably also know people that don't work out that much or that often, or maybe not at all, yet they eat well and they live well and they look like bionic human beings. That is the answer. So whether you take off months from the gym, it's not about losing the gains, dog. That's easily retained or regained. The real change takes place on the plate, straight up. Like I've done this in world championship levels in physique and coached people all over the world from numerous kinds of ages, ailments. It doesn't matter. Oh, I can't work out. I don't care. Like on my pyramid of prioritization, the apex of the pyramid is actually the exercise. The bedrock, the foundation for change within the body and to elicit real metabolic change and body recomposition is based on nutrition. Nutrition, mindset, reading, writing, exercise, meditation, and then at the very top, exercise. Some of my clients don't even exercise for the first several months with me, yet experience incredible changes in their body, radical changes in their body, in their minds as well, losing 50, 60, 100 pounds over the course of a few months. Most people think 2 pounds per week is like a intense dieting program. I've had people lose 10 pounds a week comfortably, not on a calorie restricted diet. People would say that's not possible. People would say it's not sustainable. And I'm here to tell you, I've got records that it is.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I think people think the going to the gym and being consistent with that is the harder part. But I mean, for me personally, I can attest to it. It's really like staying consistent with what you're putting in your body, because I mean, you can always find something to do wherever you are. If you're traveling, I mean, you can just, walk, run, do some push-ups, do some kind of things using your your body weight itself, but usually at times, sometimes the options aren't necessarily there, or you don't think they're there. You know what I mean? Making kind of conscious decisions
Definitely.
about the right things in your body. So then you kind of like start falling into a trap. Like maybe you travel for business, then you at the airport you make a fast food option every time, or you start eating super late, which for me at this point, like I need a cutoff time, because if I do that, I feel like horrible, just from like an energy standpoint. So I think a lot of people have the misconception, and especially with it being the new year, making New Year's resolutions about I'll hit the gym. But like you said, like you need to really figure out and think about what you actually have been eating, and then what actually like you need to set up yourself for success in that sense as well.
Totally. I love seeing the gym crowd change at the beginning of every year, because there's this huge wave of newcomers. Of course, doesn't matter where you are, where you live, it always happens. And you can I look at people literally and think, see people with their trainers, see people by themselves, and can sense their frustrations. I can I know what they're looking to get out of what they're doing in their workouts by how they look and how they move, straight up. Most of those people don't need the gym. Most people in general don't need the gym. First of all, most people don't work out properly. Most people exhibit terrible form, technique, and it's arguably dangerous. Most people think they need to put weight on a bar even though they can't move in their own body without weight at all. Crawl, walk, run, just like in life, but yet people want to sprint right out the gate. Most people just need to focus on what they eat, period. Again, the single most profound impact you can have on your health is controlling what you put into your freaking mouth. And people don't want to do that, Roman, because exercise is not an innate need. We like to do it. We want to do it. We should do it. Eating, however, you got to do that. And that's everywhere you go. We live in a world of abundance, especially in the Western world, especially in the United States. And everything is tied to food. We celebrate with food. We depress with food. We joy with food. We love with food. Birthday, funeral, it doesn't matter the occasion, and it doesn't matter the environment or the community. It's going to get served to you on a platter from your grandmother with a smile, yet it's what's poisoning you. That's very paradoxical, and it's psychologically difficult to try to disassociate the two, because in one side, your mind or your decision making is trying to say, I don't want to do this because I'm trying to focus on my diet, or whatever the reasoning is. But on the other side of that is, I need to eat, or you think you need to eat. That's where the difficulty comes in, as opposed to how easy it is to kind of rationalize, which you kind of illustrated very well with the exercise, to think about, okay, I'm on the road. This is what I need to do. I need a plan. It's harder to do it, or I should say, it can be, because again, this is about simplicity. It can be difficult for people to do this because of the innateness of what eating is. Meaning, well, what if I just told you just fast? Oh, I can't do that. BS. Yes, you can do that. Can has nothing to do with it. You just don't want to do it. That's where the problems come in. That's where the difficulty comes in, because it's about doing things we don't want to do. But when it comes to change, real change within the body and in the mind, we're talking about the beginning steps to self-mastery. And that does not happen without some suffering, because the road to self-mastery is paved, my friend, in suffering.
Yeah, I agree. And like you said, food you need to eat to live. You don't necessarily, like you said, have to go to the gym to live. And food has that, innate emotional kind of tie. And a lot of people use food as, I guess, a safety blanket. So, that's
Definitely
their kind of, I guess, vice. They binge eat, and obviously leads to different eating disorder, and, sometimes tied with mental illness and depression and stuff like that. But yeah, I mean, you don't know what you're kind of capable of as well. Like you said, to fast. I mean, I don't mind fasting at all. Sometimes like it like cleanses my body, and I can get a better focus. And you don't necessarily know what you're capable of, because I think usually, I don't know what the percentage, but your body starts telling yourself to slow down, like past kind of like a plateau. Like you can go past that. Like you look at people doing like ultra marathons and, crazy feats. Like why, how are they doing it? Some of them don't necessarily look at, as like the quintessential, like physical specimen, as well. different, I guess, ultra sports or whatever you want to call them. But like, what is that? It's kind of that mindset, and they've learned how to like, overcome that and push through that hurdle. And I think anyone can really do anything with the right mindset and the right training. And if they do it enough times, eventually it's kind of like trying to kick down a door. Eventually you're going to kick down the door if you keep being persistent and kind of honing your craft. I mean, I've done it with like small things. Like I'm a foster parent, so my wife and I fostered 29 kids, and the first 2 kids we thought we were going to adopt. So when they left, it kind of hit me hard. So as a result, before that, I didn't really do much cardio. I played sports as my like cardio and did weight training and different things with weights, free weights, kettlebells, stuff like that. And then I randomly bought a road bike. So like the first day, I rode like 50, 60 miles without like, doing anything in terms of cardio for like years.
Nice.
And it was just one of those things. I think what was fueling it is me trying to like, I guess, numb that emotional, tie-in or that emotional pain. So like I said earlier, like the one reason is, for me to work out in general is that, that sense of like it being calming and therapeutic. Now, a lot of people don't like to work out. And when they kind of fall out of it, I think it's that like forming good habits, because it's easier to form bad habits and good habits. And you need some kind of repetition in order to kind of get back into it. So like when I do get back into consistently, and it's not even like you said, going to the gym, like it could be, going for a walk once a day or doing something like that, as long as you kind of maintain or work towards, a diet that makes sense for you and what you're actually putting in your body. So I think you don't know what you're capable of. And, even that, like your body is telling you that it's hungry, or it's, I mean, half of the battle is mental, in my opinion.
I'd say it's all mental. The physical is a byproduct. What we're able to do, what happens, turning that on, finally putting it all together, so to speak. I say that, first off, 29 kids foster, that's amazing for you and your wife. That's incredible. In regards to athletic performance and compensating for binge eating and whatnot, you're touching on a lot of the points, the mindset, the repetitions. I am not a stainless saint as far as in what I talk about, where I come from. I was diagnosed with binge eating disorder, severe depression, an abuser of drugs, mostly cocaine and benzodiazepines and alcohol for years, for the better part of 20 years. I had $1,000 a week cocaine habit for a good bit of that time. And I used what I now teach to people to get myself out of these places. I cured myself from these addictions, quote, I don't believe in addiction, but my draw to these items, because it was about weakness. It was about a lack of accountability. It was about just not having the intestinal fortitude to be able to look myself in the face and say, no, I'm not going to do this. I'm not going to do that. Through a diet and through some very simple list of habits, cured. Binge eating disorder, cured. Run a sub 3.5 hour marathon without any food or water before or on the course as a carnivore, so without carbohydrates. Did it. People said it was impossible. People said I couldn't do it. I'm in a group with about 50 other friends that are all ultra athletes. I myself have never ran an ultra marathon. I've only run one marathon, to be honest. It was my first one and my only one. But I did it to prove a point of the kind of the synergy you're talking about between the mind-body connection, and to kind of prove my theories as being sound. So I'd finished a half marathon in New Orleans on Halloween day, wear costumes and everything. It was really cool. And we love to dress up in New Orleans, so it's pretty easy to do. I finished the marathon, and I'd already been animal-based and pretty much strictly carnivore for about 2 years at this point. Finished the half marathon rather, and I was like, wow, I'm not that tired. I could just run a whole one. Let me see when the next marathon is. I've always wanted to do this. It's been a peak that's been evading me. So I found the next marathon close to me was in Philadelphia, November 21st. So I had 21 days to prepare for it. That's it. I did as much training as I could in that amount of time, which is totally inadequate. The furthest run that I clocked during the training was about 17 miles. And I ran the half marathon in sub 90 minutes. So I was like, I'd like to do it under 3 hours, but I think that might be a bit too much for my bite. So let's say 3.5 hours, I can do it. And people are like, there's no way. You haven't trained long enough. You don't have the endurance. You don't have the stamina. You need carbohydrates. All these things they were telling me about, high glycolytic output, inability to sustain over time as a carnivore, and you cannot do it fasted. You are definitely going to need water on the core. All boom, 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 boom. I did it. I ran it. Time was right, 3:26 and a couple of seconds. But again, to what you're talking about, that potential, there's limitless potential within our minds. But there are so many barricades in front of that potential that have either been instilled through what you touched on, childhood, society, friends, our own doubts and skepticisms. And until you learn to push against them, they're always going to be there. The rules or the malleability of the world doesn't change unless you push back into it. And it took me having to say, F this, like, I'm going to show y'all I can do this, because they might have thought seeing would be believing, but to me, feeling was understanding. And I knew what I felt. I knew how I felt. I knew what my body was telling me and its abilities to be able to perform. Now, did it get hard after like mile 18? Yeah. Without water and everything on the course? Yeah. And trying to hold that pace? Yeah, it was difficult. But I just went back to my habits. I went back to my playbook of like, just get through this, quarter mile, half mile, third, quarter mile, half mile, 3/4 mile. And then it was it. But being in this group of 50 other ultra athletes that have way cooler accolades than me, when they were all kind of talking about their trophy cases and the host goes, well, I don't know if you guys have heard about this thing that Jake did and And I was like, well, I was very humble about it, because to me, they're all way cooler than I am in that sense of athletic performance. And I told my story and they were like, are you serious? That's not possible. Well, I was like, well, I'm telling you it happened. So I'm not lying. But that's another, for me to think that these people were the ones that I look up to. And here they are telling me it's impossible. I'm like, none of you then have even begun to tap into what you think your own potentials are. If you're telling me that's impossible, don't ever freaking say that, first off. Don't ever say you can't do something. Tell people you don't want to do it. Like something as simple, I challenge my clients with this all the time, as having to have extreme ownership in the sense of, Roman, hey man, can you come over today to the party? Nah, man, I can't. Tell me you won't. Tell me you don't want to. Tell me what you're doing. It's a simple thing, but you could come. You could. Can is the ability to do. You have the ability. So when someone asks me like, hey, Jake, do you want to come to this party? No, I'm good. I'm not going to say I can't. And that's one little step of accountability that changes your entire mindset and shifts your paradigm about how you think about yourself and the way you relate that to other people. Does it always get received well from them? Not necessarily. What do you mean? No. Like, what do you want me to lie to you? But again, there's so many layers in there, and that we just can't see it because of all the other layers of junk and gunk we've got on top of us. And it takes going through this clean out system that I put people through in order for them to unlock their minds and see it within themselves.
Yeah, I think accountability is huge. And I think in terms of kind of like the culture, or at least Western cultures, there's a lot of like a victim mentality. So you don't take, accountability for your actions or blame situations in terms of like your outcomes. And I think it's interesting a lot of the time, like let's say, two siblings experience the same things growing up, some kind of abuse or alcoholic or, substance abusing father, mother, both. And then one ended up following that path and everything, like every setback, every failure, and maybe ended up in prison, blamed it on that situation that he came out of. And then the other sibling used that to fuel, what he became, maybe a nonprofit, an entrepreneur, giving back to, his or her community. So it's kind of interesting when you take a mindset and you take something and can use that as an excuse, but use it to, fuel what you're really trying to achieve. And a lot of the time things are cycles. So stuff that I see, like as a foster parent, like, oftentimes the parents of the children were in foster care, and then their parents were in foster care and, suffered from stuff like mental illness and, different kind of substance abuse, and then abuse and neglect. So if you don't break out of that cycle, and I mean, it holds true too, a lot of your eating habits and what you know about food are developed from, your parents, the environment you grow up in. And if that's kind of standardized and shown that you can eat anything, it's okay, so on and so forth, or you're not shown that like you have to be somewhat regimented and really be mindful, especially in the US with the stuff they get away with selling in terms of preservatives and stuff they put in food, then, you hold it to yourself. Because I mean, I understand there's certain situations where, weight gain and things of that nature is, health related stuff with like, pituitary gland and thyroid and whatnot. But, a lot of 99% of the things that, we have in that sense, we can take accountability for and choose to, I guess, make a change as well.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And you hit the number on the head, 99%. It's funny how many people think they fall into that 1% as far as in being the outliers of statistics. But so many people, well, I have this allergy or I have this ailment. Says who? You got it diagnosed? Most people know. Did not. Oh, I have a, disposition towards this. That the amount of people I have literally cured of their allergies or their ailments, I mean, autoimmune issues for sure, things that people have failed to try and have healed for years, for their entire lives. Like one of my good friends, that's a client of mine, prescribed since he was a child, an adolescent child, to Xanax for depression and anxiety. Since he was a child, man. He's been with me now for about 4 months. And for the last almost 2.5 months now has been the longest he's gone since he was an adolescent without taking a pill. He's same age as you, or same age as we are, 38, 39. And he's made several 2.5 months now without taking a pill. He's not taking any supplements. He's just freaking eating. He's still working out, but the working out has never changed. He's always done that. But literally the way he is eating and what I'm putting him through habitually, with happiness rather, not like forcibly torture, this dude is changing his life. I mean, find me somewhere else where that happens. I've got someone coming on board that's been a heroin addict for 30 years now. He's been through every clinic, been through every rehab. He spent hundreds of thousands of dollars trying to fix himself. Can't do it. The dependency models that surround us of, well, it's okay, just keep coming, we'll figure it out. There's too much coddling. There's not an attack to the root cause because people don't know. They don't believe it. They don't think it could be this simple. And it is that simple for 99%. Again, the number. I'll give the 1% variance for fallibility. But for 99%, Roman, what's going on with you, whether it's anxiety, depression, sexual abuse, trauma healing, postmenopausal recovery, postnatal, prenatal, any issues of the mind, any issues regarding autoimmune disease, and a slew of other ailments, not to mention how you're going to feel, how much better you're going to sleep, how much better your libido is going to be by how and what you eat, period, irrespective of exercise. And people say that I'm a lunatic or that I'm a heretic or an extremist. I'm sitting here pretty happy and smiling a lot. It's a beautiful day. I wake up every single morning like it's Christmas morning, as do my tribe, I'll call them. There's no tears. There's nothing but laughter. There's nothing but smiles and gratitude and appreciation and a zest for life and a vitality they never had before because of what they eat. All the other stuff comes, but without that baseline element, the rest of it doesn't matter.
Yeah, I agree. And you mentioned a little earlier, kind of like a carnivore focused diet. And I feel like in the US and other places, they push this food pyramid, but people don't necessarily think about it. Like a lot of that is, paid, scientists, nutritionists are paid to push a certain group of foods, stuff like, milk and dairy that was pushed heavy in the country, and other things that are, quote unquote good for you. Like a lot of that is pushed by lobbyists and stuff like that. So, a lot of people have objections about focusing on like a carnivore diet, that it's high in cholesterol, so on and so forth, not healthy for you. When did you kind of like shift into that kind of, eating pattern?
Yeah, great question. I had just finished my last competition in natural bodybuilding, of which I was a vegan for over a year. And I did this competition on purpose as a vegan because all of the people that said, you can't do it, you won't be able to get the size, you won't be able to sustain and compete. Well, I finished third in the world in men's physique and the World Natural Bodybuilding Federation in 2019. So was I upset that I got bronze because I think I deserve gold? Sure. But it was good enough to prove the point. I also competed against IFBB, the International Federation of Bodybuilding competitors, who are allowed to use performance enhancers. And I finished second place in one of those competitions, also in physique, also as a vegan, naturally. And for people to say like that can't be done, well, there's more proof that it was. So just after that, this is November 2019, a friend of mine mentioned to me about carnivore. And I've always been curious for every diet. That's what's gotten me into all the diets, where I've been for over a year minimum of every diet I've ever tried, because to me, that's the adequate sample size to be able to collect and gather legitimate data. Not when someone goes, oh, I tried the carnivore diet for a week. Please piss off. Oh, I did this for 30 days. No, doesn't matter. Minimum of a year is what I've done for pescatarian, vegetarian, vegan, standard American, bro, if it fits your macros, Mediterranean, paleo, Whole30, keto, and now carnivore for several years, because I started in June of 2020 and here we are today, January of 23. So a friend of mine pitched it to me. Again, I was a vegan at the time, so I was coming from the diametric opposite side of that spectrum. And as much ego as I had invested into veganism, because I had literally still had the medal proverbially around my neck of, winning all these competitions. And I was like, dude, I mean, respectfully, I think I know what I'm talking about. I'm the nutritionist, I'm the athlete, I'm the trainer, and all this stuff. And he's like, dude, just try this out. So I said, fine, I'll bite, I'll try it. So I started to do this, and I checked my ego at the door. I put everything I knew aside, and I let my intuition and my body, my feeling, become the understanding. Was it difficult for me? Damn right. Because I had thought for the entire 30 some odd years of my life that I was, let's say, metaphorically right-handed. And then all of a sudden, this whole new way starts to happen. I'm like, oh my God, I can do it with this way. Meaning nutritional sciences that we thought or assumed to be dogmatic or absolute were not. You touched on a little bit of that with the food pyramid. That thing is all jacked up, first of all. Gluten that comes from America is total poison. Any gluten that comes from America, I don't care if you're the most artisanal baker in the world. Sorry, hate to break it to you. Let's have an example here. If gluten as it occurs naturally on Earth, as the creator would make it, looks like this, the body can accept it. The body knows what to do with it because it's a natural existing item. The body recognizes it. It's decently compatible. This is the American version, meaning they are that drastically different in what they are. They look the same once they're cooked, once they're made, once they're changed chemically, but how the body receives that is totally different. Why does one look different than the other? Well, the American version has been able to be modified to withstand temperature, transportation, pressure, shelf life extension, etc., because it needs to be a product. It's a commodity. You touched on the promotion of things in the pyramid. Well, yeah, subsidies, government subsidies. We run and trade on futures of corn and wheat and barley and oats. That's the backbone of the American futures economy right there, right? Like every day. And it's commodities trading. So we have to promote that, or it needed to be promoted, unfortunately, to the detriment of our collective healths. You couple that on top of skewed dietetic studies by a la Ansel Keys and the low-fat, high-carbohydrate theory of reducing cholesterol and overall arterial sclerosis and heart disease by way of eating that way. Also flawed status and sample sizes. He used inaccurate subject studies, meaning he selected his countries very uniquely, omitted certain bits of information to where it would kind of improve his reasonings better as opposed to more objective. And there's a slew of other stories that are similar to that. Other scientists, other gatherings of data, a lot of them are epidemiological, so there can't always be causation because a lot of it is just suggestive and it can't necessarily be positively correlated as proof. But I'm kind of rambling on that a little bit. But nonetheless, with carnivore, the more I did this, again, the feeling became the understanding. I'll ask you another question. You're a father. You have lots of foster children. Breast milk is a miracle of mammalian evolution. Why do we have it? Why does it happen? Because it gives our infants everything they need from a single source of sustenance. It's animal-based, so every vegan on earth, hey, guess what? Your kids are not vegans. Because guess what? Breast milk is animal-based. Again, I say breast milk is animal-based. Breast milk is a single source of sustenance that gives an infant everything it needs. It's readily available, so that means it's extremely and efficiently utilized well by the infant's body. There's minimal discard, meaning everything that it's received is pretty much absorbed. So if you've ever seen an infant's bowel movements, they're not all that bad when they're on breast milk. Kind of neutral, kind of, wow, what is this? I guess my kid's the special one because it doesn't smell much. It doesn't look that bad. Great, this is awesome. It's not until you start adding in those green and orange jars where everything goes to hell. There's rashes, there's screaming, the smells, obviously. But the most important element about breast milk, of why it does what it does, is because it does not unnecessarily duress the infant's body. Why is that so important? Because it's an infant. It is developing. It is fragile. Too much, a digestive ailment can freaking kill a developing child. So evolution created this breast milk in order to feed and nourish, to help grow and develop the child as quickly, as easily, and efficiently as possible with minimal discard, with as little amount of duress. So as adults, if we were to try to find a single source of sustenance for ourselves to do the same, to develop, to clean, to thrive without stressing our bodies, it's red meat. It's not an avocado. I'm talking about, again, a single source, one thing. If you could eat one thing for the rest of your life to live, not just okay, not just to survive, but to thrive, there is nothing else on earth, gram per gram, that is going to have the macronutrients, the micronutrients, the amino acid profile, the enzymes, and the minerals as would red meat. People can say, well, what about spinach or kale? It would take dump trucks sized amounts of spinach, kale, or other vegetable, or whatever, and you still would not get, because some of these amino acids only exist in animal foods and animal proteins. Also, on top of that, the duress factor, meaning if you ate that much of those leafy cruciferous greens, good luck. It's going to hurt a lot because your body's going to go, what the F? As opposed to the red meat, it's literally like breast milk. Everything from here down, meaning not the tongue and not the brain, and pretty much, I'm ready to say, every human body on earth loves the carnivore diet. It's this, the pleasure center of food, and this, the ego center of pride, that gets in the way.
Yeah, and like you mentioned, some people have misconceptions about like what the carnivore diet is. Is that including all meat? But like you mentioned, obviously it's red meat.
It does include all meat, anything from an animal, except honey, even though, debatable whether bees are animals or not, but anything from an animal, any byproduct. And like you touched on with dairy is good to go. However, only raw. Nope. Nothing that's pasteurized or homogenized. So like I just came back from my forage today and got tons of raw cream, tons of raw milk, tons of raw cheese. Love it, but only raw.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of people, I know a lot of people that have done it and do it, and a lot of people have obviously objections to it. I think I've done, my wife tried vegan, raw vegan, stuff like that. I just don't like how my body feels, on it, like energy wise and the way things are digested or processed. And like you said, I don't think I've ever had an issue where I focus. I've never done like fully carnivore diet, but when I made kind of meat, the main like mainstay, I would say maybe 65%, 70% of my diet, I felt a lot more energy, like more explosive, and things of that nature.
I'm going to have to get you on the program then, brother, because I mean, you serve a big community and like you can touch and reflect that, the world is not as we perceive it, Roman. The world is as we are. And as great as things have gone, you're obviously happily married, successful, emanating lots of influence and energy on 29 souls so far, probably many more than that. It's like when a man is right, his world is right. And there is no way on earth that I haven't found that can get you to this level of consciousness, mental clarity, confidence, self-esteem, vitality, and any other adjective you want to put in the sense of positive health than can this way of eating. Now, is it debatable? Is it highly controversial? Absolutely. You talked about veganism and raw veganism. Again, I've been there for over a year, been a vegetarian for over a year. Unless you are a raw vegan, you are eating a lot of processed stuff. It also takes a rainbow's worth of things to nourish you. And then when I was a bodybuilder, for sure, because guess what? Those macronutrients do not exist naturally, and certainly not in the ratios you need them for. So what do you have to do? You have to buy and use processed supplements. That's another thing. All my clients, myself, for years, no supplements, ever. No nasty bowel movements, no gas, no indigestion, no inflammation, no headaches. Like the symptoms or the lack thereof, again, the feeling is the understanding. A few years ago, I was in Mexico. My mother's actually from Mexico. And I was at my family's place down there in the mountains in Michoacan. And my aunt casually says, after a sip of red wine, "Oh, every time I drink red wine, I get a headache." And my uncle from another room in the house, he's like, "Well, then you probably shouldn't drink red wine." And we all kind of had a little laugh. But in my mind, I was like, your body is the greatest communicator in the world because it's unbiased in its messaging. This thing, the brain, is our reason that the communication gets messed up because we choose not to listen to it. "Hey, Roman, it's getting pretty warm in here, so I'm going to start secreting some sweat to let you know we're trying to cool off. And if you keep doing this at this pace, eventually I'm going to have to slow you down, maybe have some cramps, and then there's going to be heat exhaustion and then maybe heat stroke, and then you might die. So just FYI, and if you go, okay, cool, I'm going to slow down, I'm going to cool off, I'm going to get some fluids in me, I'm going to take a rest." What happens if you keep going? Well, the body told you. You didn't listen. "Hey, Roman, we're cold. Here's some goosebumps for you to know about it. Da-da-da-da. If you don't listen to me, you know what's going to happen." It's the same thing with our nutrition. But again, this freaking thing in our mouths, the tongue, and this freaking thing between our ears, the brain, which a lot of it is egoic mentality, meaning we are defined in the dirt. We've dug our feet into this belief system because it's how we grew up. It's how our parents grew up. It's what we've built careers on. How can you tell someone that's got 40 years in this field, in nutritional science or dietetics or vegan consciousness, or they're a vegetarian cafe owner, like they literally won't hear it. They will refuse to listen. Why? I literally stepped off the freaking stage as a vegan and listened to this as a matter of perspective. Why? I checked my ego at the door. Why can't you? I don't understand that. And if it is the difference in your health, possibly life or death, you like taking all those pills, you like having all those allergies, you like needing supplements and medication, if that's the truth, okay, maybe it is. Help me understand that then. I refuse to believe I don't understand. If someone ever tells me that you don't understand, bullshit. You can't explain it well enough. So help me understand. Stephen Covey, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. Seek first to understand. It's probably one of my favorites of the 7. And for me, the word is curiosity. Curiosity is what's got me into all these nutritional experiments, usually through girlfriends, because I dated a girl, she was a vegetarian. I dated a girl, she was Mediterranean diet. I dated a girl, she was a pescatarian. And then kind of dated a girl that was a vegan. So it worked out that way. And for me, I just said, sure, I'll go along with it. Why is it that there are so many former vegans that are carnivores, but there are very few to any carnivores that are now vegans. Just like you said, how it made you feel, right? Your energy was down. There's big vegan athletes out there now that are seeing all kinds of, there's one in particular, a super ultra man, that's having problems now later in his life because, again, those supplements are only going to get you so far, and eventually there's going to be a plateau and then soon thereafter deterioration in ability and performance because the energy that you're utilizing is BS because it's not natural. If it's supplemental, it's unnatural. Whereas this stuff, this is as God made it. This is fruits of the land, salt of the earth. The compatibility, the bioavailability of this nutrition is virtually 100%. You know, like I come from a background of abusing drugs, and I've always used the metaphor of, do you want the Bolivian jungle paste cocaine right from the lab that's 100% pure? Or do you want the stuff that's been stepped on, meaning reduced in quality, 15 freaking times by the time it gets up to you in New York and has to be passed by some poor mule in a toilet in the Bronx and then shuttled down to you, and by the time you get it, it's like 12%. Which one do you want to party with? And I was always, you know, like, I want the stuff from the jungle lab, obviously, not this garbage. That's the difference of what people are putting into their bodies, but yet their minds, their pride will disagree with you till their teeth fall out.
Yeah, I agree. So what's one piece of advice you could leave with the audience, personal or professional?
One piece of advice I could leave with the audience, personal or professional. I'll say personal, in that as much as I am, I don't want to say passionate about what we're talking about here, still, I love the world for what it is and the diversity that it provides. Thank God. Because otherwise, what would the monochromatic, bland life be like? You know, it'd be monotonous and boring. My line, I guess you could call it, to give everyone is to never forget it takes all the people to make a world. So however they are, however they look like, color, size, shape, diet, disposition, belief, it doesn't matter. Like we need that diversity and that mixture, because that keeps us guessing, that keeps us curious. You know, that's what's motivated me as a scientist. I consider myself a scientist. I'm not a PhD, but I consider myself a scientist because I'm a firm believer in the traditionalism of the scientific method, in that I am not trying to beat my chest and be right, Roman. I am a believer of, again, the traditionalism of the scientific method. And as a scientist, I am constantly trying to disprove my hypothesis. That's the job of a scientist. It's about trying to disprove your hypothesis, not to try to prove law. Thomas Edison, the best example, my favorite. Once he cracked the code on how to make a light bulb, wow, how'd you do it? Well, I learned 10,000 ways how not to. That's how I figured it out. Why would you do that? Because I learned 10,000 ways how not to make a light bulb. That's a scientist. Nope, scribble it up. Nope, scribble it up. Nope, but always learning the whole time. So again, it takes all the people to make a world. You got to be curious about it. And without them, I don't know, it'd sure be boring.
I agree. So I really appreciate you stopping by today. Can you let the audience know how they can find you or anything else you have going on?
Certainly. And it's been great being with you. Thank you for hosting the space, man. You can find out more about me on lifelikejake.com. I'm also on Instagram, the same handle, at lifelikejake. Taking applications through my website, or you can send me direct messages right there on Instagram. It'll be me that responds to you. I will hunt you down if you say you want to work and then you try to run away, but it's always up to everybody, man. People are, there's a lot of sick people out there, and we are masked very well from our sicknesses, and a lot of times it's from ourselves. So if you're trying to become happy, healthy, and wealthy, it's literally what I do, and I'd love to help you do that too. lifelikejake.com.
Awesome. Thanks again for stopping by.
Thanks, Roman. You have a great day, brother.